Hi, family. I'm an addict and my name is Gina. I want to thank God for another day alive and clean. I don't know about anybody else. I say this every time I share. Any day that I wake up alive and clean, the day has already exceeded my expectations from the time I open my eyes. And I mean that, it seems like in the last 14, 15 months of the pandemic, since we haven't been in any face-to-face meetings here in New York, it's just social media one after the other of another addict being lost to this disease. And I have no illusions about where my life is today. I have no illusions about how good it is, and I have no illusions about what happens to those of us who stop coming and stop making meetings. So, I truly believe that there's a lot of reasons why people come to Narcotics Anonymous. Some of us come here because we get encouragement from our jobs that if we want to stay employed, maybe we want to make a meeting of Narcotics Anonymous. Some of us get a little encouragement from the court, what I call a nudge from a judge to make a meeting. Some of us get told by our families if we want to remain in our homes, if we want to keep our relationship, then we make a meeting, and for whatever reason that you get here really doesn't matter. I came here for one real simple reason, and that was that I had no place left to go. This was the last stop on the block for me. And I try to remember that for a lot of people walking in here, that they come here for that reason also, that this is the last stop on the block for them. I tried a lot of things that our literature talks about to try to fix the brokenness inside of my spirit. I tried a lot of things to fix the brokenness inside of me and the despair. I did a lot of the things that the literature talks about. I tried the medicine, I tried the religion, I tried the psychiatry, I tried men, I tried food, I tried shopping, I tried geographics, and wherever I went, there I was, and I took me with me. And nothing took away the pain ever of living inside of my own skin and being me. So I was born to teenage parents in the 1960s. The only reason that I'm here is probably because abortion was illegal in 1962. So when teenagers, got pregnant, they got married. So here I am. Uh, okay, I see identification. My parents stayed together long enough to have my brother 2 years later, and then they split up. And so I come from what was called in 1962 a mixed marriage. I have a Jewish mother and an Italian Catholic father. I was told that I came from a mixed marriage. And my mom was a New York liberal Jewish hippie who brought us up as little kids. We were constantly being taken on buses down to the Capitol. We did ban the bomb and, march on the Capitol, Vietnam War protests. My mom was involved in the formation of the National Organization for Women, and the kids thought I was really fucking bizarre. They thought I was just bizarre. I remember I don't have a whole lot of memories of being young. And one of the things that I share about is that a lot of the times that I share about memories of being a young child, I have to say that I don't know if these things really happened or if I just told myself that they happened so many times that I start to believe my own bullshit. Because even 38 years into recovery, I'm really pretty still burnt about a lot of the things that happened. And I don't know if they really happened or I just invented them in my own mind. But this I know really happened. So I was in the second grade, and it's one of my very few childhood memories. And we were standing in front of the class. We each got to do show and tell about what we did that weekend. And my little classmate, Jenny, was standing in front of the class with her finger up her nose and a pencil in her hand saying, "We went to the Empire State Building this weekend and my mom got me a pencil." And it was my turn, and I had leaflets about how Viet Cong were shooting children full of plastic bullets that were undetectable by X-ray. So, you know, kids thought I was strange. It was the 1960s. Moms wore A-line dresses and they walked you to school and they packed your lunch and they had cookies and milk waiting when you came home. I was a latchkey kid. I had a key around my neck. I walked home from school myself. I let myself in the apartment. I took care of my kid brother until my mom came home from work. Dinner for us was cold cereal and cans of soup and TV dinners. And the truth of the matter is that when I came here, you told me that my life could be whatever I wanted it to be and that I needed to start taking responsibility. I don't believe in, when I hear people talk about that they came from a dysfunctional family. I have no idea what that means. I think it's a lot of Dr. Phil Gucci sounding shit. I can tell you that whatever my parents are or weren't, I'm absolutely the sickest thing my family ever produced in several generations. And I can't blame my family for that. I'm also on my way to 59 years old. And at some point, I need to stop blaming mom for not having breastfed me in 1962. Where do I want my life and where do I want it to go from here? So, as a kid, the things that I remember are things like Valentine's Day, and we would be sitting in the class and the kids would walk in and they would have a whole stack of Valentines and they would walk around the classroom and they would drop a Valentine on everybody's desk except for me. And when kids had birthday parties, they would get a stack of invitations and they would walk around the classroom and they would put an invitation on every kid's desk except for me. And I can't tell you that that's an accurate recollection, but I can tell you that's how it felt. It felt like everybody else in the world knew how to belong. Everybody else knew how to be a part of. Everybody else was somehow one of the crowd. And some reason I was on the outside looking in. There was a handbook for living and for surviving in this world that somehow everybody else got a copy of. And I don't know how, but somehow I got beat out of mine when I was born because I just didn't get it. I really just didn't get it. So, I say that I started to use around my 11th birthday. What I picked up first was I was about 10 and I picked up cigarettes. And anybody else that I know who started smoking somewhere around that age, you ended up smoking whatever your parents smoked because mostly you were pilfering cigarettes out of their pack, which is what I did. I took cigarettes out of my mom's pack, so I smoked her brand. And by the time I was 11, I had two really profound things happen that were life-changing for me. So the first was that I had a 15-year-old boy who was the captain of the wrestling team, and I was an absolute nobody. So this 15-year-old captain of the wrestling team comes and asks me to go steady with him. He'd never talked to me before in my life, and I was just so taken by this, and he gave me that line that we've all heard. He told me, if you love me, you'll do it. And it was just all I ever wanted. I just wanted somebody to love me. So I did it. And overnight, I went from being a nobody in the school to being that girl that you wrote about on the bathroom wall. I was the girl that you called my house and told my mother your daughter's a whore. I was the one who came out of class and found whore written across my locker. Girls didn't hang around with me and your moms told you to stay away from me because they would talk about you like they talked about me. Don't hang around with Gina. You want a reputation? I was the girl with the reputation. And boys came by my house. They came by for one thing. They came by for one thing only. They didn't come by to hang around with me, to take me home to meet their mom. They didn't walk me home from school and carry my books. They came looking for a piece of ass, and they got it. And every boy that I slept with, I felt worse and worse about myself. And I kept hoping that maybe this time this would be the one who would stay. I kept hoping that this would be the one who wasn't going to zip up and take off. It took me a long time in recovery to begin to forgive myself for accepting sex when I really just wanted to be loved and I didn't know the difference. I didn't know the difference. I didn't know how to be loved. I didn't know how to tell you I hurt. I didn't know how to ask for a hug. I knew how to give away my body, and I thought that that meant something. So, my using took off real quickly, and it took off real differently than the other kids. I started using also around my 11th birthday, and it started off the way a lot of us do on Friday nights. 4 of us would chip in a quarter each for a $1 bottle of wine. I'm dating myself. If you remember dollar bottles of wine, we would get a nickel bag of weed, we would get a $1 bottle of wine, and that was our Friday night. And it didn't take me long that I didn't want to wait until Friday, and I didn't want to share. If there were a drug of choice that I had, it was more and yours, and I absolutely loved yours. If I could keep mine and do yours, that was the best. So we started to go through people's medicine cabinets. And, it's 1974, 1975. There's no internet. You can't Google like what this shit is that you find in somebody's medicine cabinet. Does this get you high? Is it blood pressure medication? Is it heart disease? Who the hell knew what it was? So we would take a medicine out of people's cabinets and ask around, who knows what this is? If this fucks you up, I don't know, give it to GINA, she'll take it. And that's really what I was about. I wanted to be the worst. I was, look at me. I was, the craziest, the most outrageous. I would do anything, take anything. I started to make my institution of choice, which was the flight deck. And if you've ever been locked on a locked ward where they go through your luggage and take away your sharps and pull the shoelaces out of your shoes, and you hear that door close behind you, there's a really, really frightening, quieting feeling that kind of takes the punch out of you when you hear that locked door behind you, because you realize that, I didn't know what the word powerless was about. I didn't have a first step in my life, but I knew that feeling of helplessness, that I was someplace that I didn't want to be, and I wasn't being given any choices about whether or not I was going to be going or not. And there's always a fear in me every time I got put into one of those places that this was the time that they weren't going to let me go. I was staying. I was a danger to me and to other people. And every time I got locked up, I knew that I was getting locked up for acting crazy. I wasn't getting locked up for being crazy. And I knew the difference. I mean, I was with some people, and not taking their inventory. I remember my very first, time on the flight deck and having people tell me that they were from Jupiter and believing it. And I knew that I really wasn't there. I just couldn't stop acting self-destructive. I couldn't stop hurting myself. And nobody really knew how to stop me. They didn't know what to do with me, so they locked me up. I hear us say sometimes that our best thinking got us to Narcotics Anonymous. My best thinking never could have come up with a place like NA. I was 15 years old when I realized what I thought was a good business decision, that I'd been giving my ass away for the last 4 years and I could have been getting paid for it all along. So I thought that was a good sound decision. So I started tricking. And by the time I came here, I was 20 years old. I had been using for half of my life, and I had nowhere to go. It was just this week that I was thinking back, and it's interesting for those of us who stay here for a little bit. As I'm getting older, my memories are fading a little bit, and sometimes I don't really have a good handle on exactly what I ate for breakfast. But I remember where I was this week 38 years ago. I remember my last day out there on April the 24th, 1983. I remember being huddled in a doorway in Manhattan on a cold, rainy April Sunday morning. And wherever you're from, I don't care where it is, I believe that the life of an addict doesn't really have a whole lot to do with our geography. There was no worse day of the week to be broke and sick than on a Sunday. And it's a cold, rainy Sunday. I'd been kicked out of my mom's house. I'd been kicked out of the guy I was living with. I had nowhere to go. And I remember that somebody had told me about a place for people like us called Narcotics Anonymous. And I wasn't really interested in going to NA. I figured that NA was for people who couldn't handle drugs, and that wasn't my problem. But I came here because I had nowhere to go. And I walked into my first meeting and somebody was standing by the door. Somebody was there to give me a hug. Somebody was there to hand me their phone number. My gratitude to those of you who saw that I wasn't in a position that I could ask you for your phone number. Sometimes I hear us talk about, oh, if people really want my number, if you really want this, if you really want recovery, then you need to come and ask me for my phone number, and then I'll give it to you. I didn't have the courage to ask you for your number. I was somebody who had been rejected my whole life, and I wasn't giving you the opportunity to do it to me again. And I have so much gratitude for the women in that room who saw how hurt I was, how broken I was, and how desperate I was, who not only walked up and gave me their phone number, but they asked me for mine. And they took my number and they called me. I didn't walk in here wanting recovery. I walked in here wanting to stop hurting. I wanted to stop hurting myself. I wished from the time I was about 12 or 13 years old that I wished that I had the courage to just put a pistol in my mouth and pull the trigger. I wished that I had the guts to off myself. I remember waking up just day after day, and my first thought of the day, and I'm sorry if somebody finds my language offensive, but my first thought of the day was fuck. Every morning that I opened my eyes, my first thought was fuck. I'm still alive. Fuck. It's another day. I didn't have bad days. I had bad weeks. I had bad months. I had bad years. And they just all ran into one another. And I remember I lived on the 19th floor of this apartment building in Manhattan, and I would stand there with my forehead up against the window, looking down at the street 19 floors below. And I saw people, and they were going, out with one another. They were going to dinner. They were, going to work. And I didn't understand how people did that. I didn't get how you lived. So the most profound thing that we do in Narcotics Anonymous, I believe, is not the cassette tapes or the CDs or standing at podiums. The most profound things that we do are like the person who was standing at my second meeting who said, "Hey, Gina, glad to see you came back again. You remembered my name, and I don't know what that means to you, but that meant something amazing to me. I was someone who was insignificant. I spent my whole life with people screaming at me. And I don't mean people like you screaming at me. I had people up in my head scream at me my whole life in my own voice. They told me, you're worthless, you're useless, you don't matter. No one gives a shit about you. If you fell off the face of the earth, nobody would notice. And I heard that. And you started to give me a little bit of hope that maybe that somebody cared about me. I didn't do anything that you suggested. And if you're new, please don't follow my lead. You told me to come early and leave late. I came late and I left early. You told me to sit in the front. I sat in the back. You told me to hang around with the women, so I hung out with the men. I came in here off of 5 years of prostitution. I had hair down to my waist. I had dresses that barely covered my ass. I was wearing fishnet stockings and 6-inch spike heels. And I slept with everything in the room because that's what I knew how to do. The literature tells us in chapter 10 in the basic text that we are each other's eyes and ears. And because of that, I know that you watch me in a meeting. And I'm going to tell you, I watch you in a meeting. I'm sitting in a meeting, even if I'm on a virtual meeting. I know exactly who's texting who across the room. I know who's making plans to hook up. I know, who's passing, back and forth with each other. I mean, I'm watching everybody. And because I watch you, I know you're watching me. So when you see me doing something that's unspiritual, when you see me doing something that's not in line with the person that I'm trying to be today, do me a favor, come and tell me. Don't walk out of the meeting and tell everybody in the parking lot. I don't get better when you tell everybody else what I'm doing. And gossip hurts and gossip kills. Narcotics Anonymous needs to be a safe place for any addict seeking recovery to come and find it. And it was the women in here who pulled me on the side and said, you don't have to sleep with everybody in here. It's okay. It's okay. You don't have to do that. So when I had about 5 months clean, I finally decided it was time to get a sponsor. Excuse me. I hadn't gotten a sponsor until then because I was so arrogant that I figured I could do this on my own. So when I finally realized that I needed a sponsor, I decided I was going to get a male sponsor. I thought I don't have a lot in common with you women. You're catty, you're bitchy, you gossip. You steal my old man in a hot second if I let you. And I thought that way about women because that was the way I treated you. And a man in my home group heard what I was up to, and he pulled me over to the side and he told me something I've never forgotten in almost 38 years. He said, if you want to learn about men's problems, go talk to men. If you'd like to learn how to be a woman, you need another woman to teach you. Go get yourself a female sponsor. The woman that I had for 31 years, and she took a little girl and she raised me. And I mean that sincerely. She didn't start me off on steps or literature or slogans. She started me on things like, honey, you need to start taking a shower like every single day. You need to stop picking dirty clothes up off of the floor and spraying cologne on yourself and putting makeup on. Think you look like you got it going on. She took a little girl by the hand and she started to teach me not only how to be a woman, but how to be a lady, which was something that I never thought was going to be possible for an addict like me. And she taught me about what it was to live by the principles of this program. And she started to take me through the steps. And I have to tell you that in the time that I've been here, life on life's terms has been life on life's terms. I am a very self-centered addict. I want to believe that because I got clean, everything should always go my way. I want to think that the sun should shine every day. I should win the lottery without buying a ticket. And what I got in the 12 steps was I got a blueprint for living life on life's terms and not having to use over it. But life on life's terms came with everything that all of the other people in the world accept as life on life's terms. It came with job problems, relationship problems, financial issues. People get sick, people die, relationships end, and that's just life. You know, the gifts always come here as long as I don't give up 5 minutes before the miracle. They don't always come in the package that I want. They don't always come in the wrapping paper that I hope that they would. They don't always have a nice, pretty bow, and they're not always tied up with nice ends. But the gifts continue to come. You know, staying here and taking suggestions. And I was raised by some old-fashioned Narcotics Anonymous people, and I'm grateful for the way that I was raised in here. I was told service is not a choice, service is an obligation. Any day that you're clean, you owe Narcotics Anonymous a day of service and gratitude. And as long as you're alive, the debt is never paid. And I believe that. I was taught about my home group. You know, when I got clean, NA was still very new in New York. You know, we'd only had our first meeting 2 years prior, and there weren't a whole lot of places that opened up their arms and wanted to allow us to hold meetings in their facilities. Going to churches and religious organizations and community centers in 1983 and telling them that you wanted to hold a 12-step meeting for a bunch of addicts was not met with, you know, a lot of enthusiasm from a lot of places. And so the facilities that we were blessed enough to be let into, our gratitude, I was told when I walked out the door of any meeting that I was in to look back and make sure that it looked better than the way that I found it. You know, that it was my obligation to try to keep the door open. And I still do that today. You know, I believe that if you don't ever leave the basics, they never have to, you know, go back to basics. If I don't leave the basics, I won't ever have to go back to basics. I believe that everything I ever needed to stay clean, I heard at my very first Narcotics Anonymous meeting. It took me a long time to put it in perspective and to understand exactly how to do some of those things. But I believe that I heard everything I ever needed to stay clean at my very first meeting. You told me real simply, you don't use no matter what. You join a group, you get a sponsor, you come early, you leave late, you do service, and you work the steps or die. It was real simple. It worked then and it's still working today. I still work with a sponsor today because I'm not the top of the food chain. And I know that. The journey still continues. You know, I am not the little girl who walked into these rooms, but God's not done with me yet. My life has continued to get better from the day that I came here, from taking some simple suggestions and doing what I was told and coming back no matter what. I haven't been an absolute angel in recovery. I have not always been a shining example of this program in action. I can tell you absolutely that I have a much worse fourth step in recovery than I ever had out there, and a more painful fourth step in recovery because I didn't have the excuse of active addiction for my behavior anymore. I thank God that you have never held me to my worst day of behavior in here. I hear us say sometimes this little cliche saying, and I don't know where it came from because it isn't in our literature, but I hear people say sometimes that those who judge don't matter and those who matter don't judge. Well, my belief is that we all judge and we all matter. And the difference today is that I try not to condemn you, and I hope that you don't condemn me. Take my inventory, see what I'm doing, and please love me anyway. Because no matter how I'm acting, I'm still an addict in this process, trying to get just another 24 hours clean. So for anybody who popped on this meeting, who has no idea why you're here, how you got here, I'm going to share with you my belief that I don't believe that the normal people in the world, whoever they might be, get up one morning and say, you know what? I think I'm going to go to a virtual meeting of Narcotics Anonymous tonight. So if you're here, there's a reason. If you're counting days, welcome. We've been praying for you. Give it 90 days. If you don't like what we have to offer at the end of 90 days, your misery is entirely refundable at the door on your way back out again. But if you stick and stay and you give it a shot, you just might find that you're in for the ride of your life. I have no illusions today about everything that I have in my life and why I have it, and that it's all due to Narcotics Anonymous. And my life is so full and I have so much, and all of this that I have, as big as it is, it all fits in a glass, fits in a stem, fits in a blunt, fits in a spike. And just like that, I can have an everything must go sale if I want. I don't want to take a chance and find out if I was wrong that I could use one more time. I'm not willing to chance the life that I have. You have given me an opportunity to come all the way back into life, to reconcile with my family. I'm a good daughter. I'm a good sister today. I'm a good mom. I'm a good wife. I'm a good employee. I didn't do that. You did that for me. You helped me today become an acceptable, responsible, and productive member of society, something that I never aspired to be. I never wanted to be that. That's not why I came here. But when I look back on my life, and I can tell you that the times that I think to myself, this is repetitive, this is boring, you know, I'm getting complacent, I can think back to one Sunday morning, and I'll tell the story and be quiet. If you're older like me, then you may have spent your weekends in an after hours place. And for anybody who ever spent any time in an after hours place, you can remember walking out of there on a Sunday morning when you've been in there since Friday. And you don't look or smell too good. And after hours places were, you know, pretty dark and blacked out. And when you finally left there and you hit the door, and, you know, if whether it was an after hours place or you were in the spot or wherever you were, and you know that feeling like being a vampire, right? When you finally like hit the outside and the sun's hitting you in the eyes and you're hearing those goddamn birds chirping, and all you want to do is like somehow, you know, get home and go to bed and go lie down. And I was trying to stumble down the streets of Manhattan, trying to get back to my apartment. And it was a Sunday morning. And as I was walking down the street, there was a man and his daughter. And he was dressed and he was showered and he was clean and he was wearing a suit. And he was probably like on his way to church or breakfast with his kid. And as we started to pass one another on the sidewalk, he took his kid And he moved his kid around to the other side so that she would sidestep me and not have to pass me. And I'll never forget the shame of being who I was. And as long as I don't pick up and I keep coming back, I never have to feel that way ever again. If I could put recovery into one feeling of my gratitude for what you have given me, thank you so much for allowing me to be able to live comfortably inside of my own skin today and be okay being me. And that's a gift that I never ever thought was possible. So if nobody else told you that they love you today, I love you, and God loves you also. And thank you so much for asking me to share tonight.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Gina.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Gina. Love you.
Thank you, Gina.
Powerful, Gina. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina.